broken by the force of a powerful morning.
Good morning, good morning.
Well, the officers of the AFU are slowly starting to talk about what's really happening in the AFU. For example, just the other day, Dmitry Glushenko, who is an officer, talked about what was happening, and he spoke about the disaster in Huliaipole. It turns out that all of this could have been prevented there, but things didn't turn out as expected. For those who think these are Ukrainians,
A brief digression.
let's see what was happening there. He says the following: the commanders on the ground saw that after the loss of Velika Novosilka, there was a threat to the flank of the Ukrainian defense. Russian troops began to build up forces, look for weak spots, and prepare for further advances. The commanders on the ground saw all of this. Intelligence reported where a strike might come from. The military asked for reinforcements and said that with their current forces, it would be difficult to do anything. It was impossible. But the leaders said, oh, let's go forward for the motherland, for our mighty leader. And that's how it all went. And Glushenko says that decisions were either not made at all or were made too late. His battalion had to hold a section of the front about 14 kilometers long. There were about 130 people in the infantry. Accordingly, there were only a few people per kilometer of the front. Naturally, there was nothing that could be done with such forces, but the commanders were like, oh well, we have important things to do here. We need to go to a restaurant, build a house, and you keep bothering us with your frontline issues. Just leave us alone. The 108th Brigade was stretched from about 20 to 50 kilometers. So just imagine a situation like that where you have to fight. You can't even call this a war, it's just abuse of the troops. There are few people, the position is huge, the enemy isn't concentrating their forces, and logistics are gradually coming under increasingly heavy drone strikes. And reinforcements are only brought in when the front either starts to collapse or basically doesn't exist anymore, and then they say, well, what can we do? Let's try in a new place. As a result, the fresh unit had to be thrown straight into a head-on battle without preparation, without setting up positions, and without a full understanding of the situation. You just arrived from training and now you're told to go fight. That's exactly what led to the disaster that could have been avoided. And on top of that, Galushchenko talks about how terrible the attitude toward the soldiers was. He talks about a group of soldiers who were on the front lines for more than 40 days. Some people were wounded, some were concussed, and some even suffered from frostbite. And despite this, the higher command ordered them to go on foot through the area covered by Russian drones to recapture another position. But just imagine a situation like that. The commander refused to carry out such an order and took the soldiers to the medics. The medics immediately hospitalized 4 of them, and 1 person had to have a frostbitten limb amputated. And imagine they wanted to force him to go through those very combat positions under fire with a frostbitten limb that was later amputated. After treatment and rest, most of the fighters returned, some were discharged, and Galushchenko calls some representatives of the higher command monsters in uniform. He talks about a system in which preserving the lines on the map, which powerful leaders often talk about, including Zelensky, turns out to be more important than preserving the unit. And a commander who got his troops killed but formally did not leave the position can suddenly be considered excellent. All sorts of awards for him, an extra garlic bun at the restaurant. A commander who took care of his men, took them away and saved them, risks being blamed. On top of everything, he has another story. Under the pretext of an inspection, about 20 staff specialists were gathered in the battalion. These were, let's say, not combat personnel at all. These were signalmen, drone specialists, logisticians, and other servicemen. They were put into a vehicle and taken to the front line in Zaporizhzhia. Without them, they could have been left without communications, without anything. But that's the kind of situation it was. People died, some went missing, and in the end, he doesn't know what happened to whom. Just imagine, the commander simply has his soldiers taken away and they say, we need them more over there. Listen, don't tell us about these things here. Anyway, Juan Pataja's sombrero of Patajan's weirdness has shrunk even more. This is just crazy. Things are happening that, well, that's not all. Here, of course, they're getting ready for mobilization in Russia. They're already getting ready in Ukraine, saying, listen, they're already gathering 500,000 people there, so let's do the same. And suddenly the tax authorities get involved, and that's not all. That's the tax authorities in Ukraine. And now they're getting involved abroad too. In short, things are getting really interesting. Look at what's happening. Our beloved domestic tax authorities, who are already so popular, will hand over the data of men aged 18 to 60 to the Ministry of Defense. They'll check with the Obereg registry. Large-scale verification awaits all. Moving on. And the administration has required the tax service to hand over everything about everyone within 90 calendar days, that is 3 months. In short, everyone will be counted. And the data from the tax registry will be cross-checked with military records, and this is how they plan to identify those people who are still outside the system. So that they are in the system and then they can be sent directly to the front line. Continuation, they localized, mobilized, and called up Pacific. They fed them with those electronic points and points in the vans of invincibility, and then go ahead to the front and do what you're supposed to do. Mobilization pool, just like those deputies keep saying. The resolution changes the rules for providing consular services, in addition to what was already in place for those aged 18 to 60 abroad. Officials will check military registration documents through systems connected to the Obereg database. For this, an electronic document in Reserve Plus or a paper version with a QR code will be suitable. If the document is missing, invalid, or the data does not match the registry, consular services may be denied. The only exception was made for documents that currently help people return to Ukraine. Can you imagine such kindness? That's something, isn't it? In Ukraine, they allow you to return so that you can personally go and take part in the war. Wonderful, just wonderful. Well, in Poland, they are preparing to deport men. Many times it was said that supposedly in Europe they will deport people, in Europe they will refuse. Few people believed they'd actually deny temporary asylum, and suddenly since yesterday Europe really started refusing temporary asylum to those men who couldn't, and to women who are also subject to military service. Those who cannot show that very document, military registration papers proving the inability to serve, or a deferment or removal from the register or something like that. And if you are liable for military service, then you have to return and go fight. And now, as I understand it, those who are fleeing through the mountains, fleeing via that very Tessa by air on paragliders. I even once showed a video of how a man escaped on a paraglider, the brave border guards, and they even shot at him with automatic rifles. All these people, as I understand, will be turned back. By the way, write in the comments what you've heard from acquaintances, how things are at the border now. Are people being turned back or not? Because things are tense in Ukraine. In Poland, they are preparing to deport Ukrainian men. Ukrainian men of conscription age who live in Poland, work unofficially or are not officially employed may lose the right to stay in the country. A representative of the Law and Justice Party said this, and on Thursday, this very party held a policy convention for the new government in Warsaw. They presented the foundation of the social program, and one of the proposals directly concerns Ukrainians in Poland. This concerns only men of conscription age who are unemployed. In addition, deportation centers are also being created. They will speed up this whole procedure so that no one, God forbid, escapes, so that Central and Eastern Europe remain safe and free, and Ukraine must win. Well, you hear it, right? You can smell freedom and democracy in the air. Ukraine must win. For this, let's send Ukrainians to Ukraine, let them die there, all these brotherly peoples, and we will breathe the air of freedom here. Wonderful. Therefore, one of the first and most important decisions of the government will be the decision to deport men, specifically Ukrainians of conscription age who are not working legally in Poland. They will have the opportunity to fight for their homeland so that the horror of this war ends, the horror of war. They will have the opportunity to fight for their homeland. Wonderful, too. In general, democracy is becoming more and more democratic in all countries around the world. For some reason, I am more than sure that the world is really moving towards something that has never been seen before. They have already set a record for the duration of the war. It has already lasted longer than the Great Patriotic War between Ukraine and Russia. This immediately brings to mind the meme with Yuri Gagarin, where he calls and asks, "Hey descendants, how are you doing? Are you already on Mars? Who are you fighting with? Who's at war?" Yeah, they've really achieved something. They're even higher than Dubu. Now it's 3 o'clock, so basically they're gonna get caught up in it. In short, it's extremely interesting. It's all hypothetical, but it's still creepy. And besides that, Ukraine isn't being given ammunition. Zelensky says, "Give us money because planes are flying, we'll bomb." That's how he says it. Original pronunciation preserved. And Trump says, "Sorry, but we won't provide you with weapons because we need it ourselves." And he admitted the shortage of certain types of ammunition after the war with Iran. He stated that this very ammunition became more limited after several months of war with Iran. Part of the American stockpiles remain significant, however, regarding some types, the situation is more complicated. He also stated that the US has sufficient stockpiles of less technologically advanced weapons. But now Patriot systems and their missiles, cruise missiles, and the Tomahawk cruise missile are being increased because some of the available ammunition is inferior in accuracy and technological sophistication to the most modern models. But the US continues to control ammunition and its stockpiles. Ammunition stockpiles are growing in the US and decreasing in Ukraine. I have already expressed my bewilderment at the fact that Zelensky keeps saying everywhere that we have no air defense ammunition. That's why. But it turns out that these people, whether good or bad, bombed whenever they wanted because, as you see, we are defenseless. Either he's talking about this so that they bomb us even harder and he can shout louder to this brooch, or honestly, I don't understand. Write in the comments what you think about this, and don't forget to subscribe to this wonderful channel if you haven't already. I don't see any reason not to subscribe to them or to him. But wonderful embedded, good morning, good morning, good morning to you, good morning, good morning. And they are now stating that the operation to isolate Crimea was planned back in 23, but the West didn't believe it. This victorious report was delivered by Zaluzhny in a publication that year. As Zaluzhny himself said, it spread widely. He is criticized for that, and Zelensky is criticized too, and now he's saying that the occupied Crimea still needs to be isolated. Honestly, I can barely remember how many times I've said this. So that people who are constantly being harassed by having their electricity and water cut off would suddenly feel love for, as some patriots shouted, their lost homeland, like Crimeans should feel like real Ukrainians. These aren't my words, I'm just quoting Juan here. The sombrero is gradually shrinking. Don't do that, please. Don't give us those kinds of triumphant reports. But he also says that he took part in a meeting of the diplomatic club of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, where they discussed the real future of Ukraine and the world. And she stated there that since around 2024, when Russia's war against Ukraine entered a war of attrition phase, the confrontation in the world has continued. And he says the old rule no longer works. He talked about Iran and about Crimea in 2023, saying, "We outlined a plan for the long-range isolation of Crimea." Western partners didn't believe in it back then, but today it will work. And he says that now there is a land corridor from Russia to Crimea, and actually this plan exists now, but it can't be used. It's all because of scientific and technological progress and those very drones from Ukraine. Well, let's take a look. Here's a map. It shows exactly what's where, what has been blocked here, blocked there. Yesterday they showed a photo of the road to Crimea, and they're really burning away every living thing there. Rimak, and in this conflict, most people agree. If I were a fuel truck driver, I wouldn't go. That's certain death. You're driving without knowing what's ahead. Unlike the military where you follow orders, these are just civilians driving a car. It's basically a chariot of death, a small drone, and that's it. You won't have time to escape. That's just how it is. I read books about the Great Patriotic War, where drivers, threatened by Messerschmitt fire, would open their truck doors. As soon as they heard the noise, and both soldiers and even civilians had learned to identify the engine sound. That's a Messerschmitt or a Junkers or our own planes, and if they heard the sound of an enemy plane, they would jump out of the cab and hide somewhere under the embankment in the ditch. Wherever it was possible, on any uneven part of the landscape, but here, where could you hide? You can't hear or see the drone from the cab, and with the slightest hit, everything blows up, everything burns. I watched in shock as they blew up those fuel trucks on the highway. No, you won't have time to run away, nothing. I don't even understand how that's possible. But anyway, now they're promising us another attack. It could be those same flamingos. They're painting them pink again. And they say there are thousands of them. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's just a test run. It's all very strange. But now serial production of the anti-ballistic missile is starting. Supposedly by August they should be ready to launch, and the first stage of development of the Freya missile defense system has been completed. So does that mean Patriots aren't needed? If there's a more powerful system in place, then everything's fine. And some industry giants have also joined the defense project according to reports, so basically if everything is going smoothly, then why do you even need them? Not everything else, but probably the last thing I'll mention is whether planes are flying in Ukraine. We're going to bomb. This is epicenter. They're bombing it now. They're bombing Rosetka and some other warehouses of huge chain stores that used to be very well known in Ukraine, and now they're not. But most likely, soon we'll hear bad news from these very manufacturers and sellers, for example, Rosetka. Its director said that this is the biggest loss in many years, and they're still calculating it. Billions of hryvnias. So it turns out that not giving goods to consumers causes huge losses for the company. Who will restore all this? Let's take a look. No one is going to restore it, but this has never happened before. And once again, the radio reported whether Ukraine will support businesses after the strikes in Russia. No, the government won't compensate businesses for losses from Russia or Russian shelling. Everything was blocked and taken. Remember, Scotch. Some were built just for the construction of their villas for a day. We have enough for powerful leaders to travel everywhere around the world, but there is nothing for businesses. Hetmansov, the Great One, the head of the tax service, stated that one of the priority areas is helping businesses with warehouse placement, particularly regarding the use of government facilities. And everything else, yes, you don't care about this business, but pay your taxes. No one will exempt businesses from taxes. That's a given. Hetmansov is known for his strange statements. But that's basically it. I mean, that's the whole article right there, just in 3 sentences. You could literally sum it up in one sentence. The government won't compensate any losses due to shelling, even though the shelling itself is being initiated. So, Wildberry's warehouses are being bombed, whether it's planes flying into Ukraine, drones, or other ballistic stuff bombing warehouses in Ukraine, no one is going to compensate for that. The question is, why poke the bear, so to speak, and stir up a hornet's nest? But apparently it's so they can later say, look how we're bombing, look how great we are. Well, let's see what else we've got that's more powerful. The leaders. There's nothing to discuss lately, so let's invite someone since it's been a while since anyone danced the Tuk dance.
Victory plan, victory plan, victory plan, victory plan. It didn't work out.
Yes, 6 victory plans. It's always being talked about, people actively discuss it, but somehow it all ends up looking weird. Well, and here we have among the powerful leaders. There are, for example, some Cossack-like brothers who say that once again you need to figure something out for yourself. Focus on the language, look, see how he sits when a man, well, with these kinds of facial, also muscles, well-groomed and clean-shaven. When they show real soldiers from the front lines, the picture is completely different, yes, totally different, and they talk to ordinary people. Well, I mean, what needs to be done and where to run? Of course, you need to run to the front to defend. That's what it means.
Teach people that people decide everything, so people must consciously understand that they need to fulfill their duty.
Right away, all the so-called draft dodgers, I'm using this term so it's clear, apparently rushed to the front with their hair flying back, for those who still have hair left, in order to fulfill their duty. But why are you filming this? But who, I understand, is just trying to burn through budget money. But who is going to listen to this? Who will pay attention to this character?
And to defend their country, their land, their people, and to understand that now, well, for me it's much easier.
But if it's easier for you to defend like that? But I just don't understand when they start telling all these stories about pizzas and some officers, some strange blockheads and so on. Like, look at me, look how I am, but you're good, I'm even less than you. Honestly, since childhood it annoys me when people say like, Kolya did this or Vasya, or drink like Vasya does, look how Vasya does it, drink like him. For God's sake, let them do whatever they want, that's their personal business. Also, if it's easier for you to sit on a box somewhere near Kiev, of course, that's not the front line. Well, come on, they're pretending that, they set up some kind of wire for him, put him on some new box.
Well, now that commander can even learn a bit and show it.
Especially the commanders, they can train him and he'll show it, they'll write him up, train him. In general, then there's this guy, Fursa, the general's son, who suddenly became an economist. So the reason I'm telling you who is who among them is because sometimes it's not clear why they are the way they are, but that's just how they are, well, yeah. But most of those who are there now are products of the previous system. There's, for example, that same guy, what's his name, that Lapton, the judge's son, who never needed anything and naturally continues his active work. Now there's this Fursa, who just keeps getting bigger above the shoulders, so to speak, while they grow below. There, things are happening differently. Everyone lives well, no one is mobilized, and these people feel great and keep talking. That's what should be done too, in my view.
This year, elections will take place in all these countries. and that can probably also affect the allocation of money to us. The main thing is,
It's all about money. Just give money. They're Putin's biggest friends.
These had important values for Ruska Hulia. We actually have the same rights, and that's why all these fascist tendencies in Europe are a threat to us. Maloney is a fascist, but she's our fascist, and she actively supports Ukraine.
Well, we in talk are about resilience. We won't even comment on this because, excuse me, this requires a medical professional and it's not really our place to comment on all of this. Let's just evaluate all this with the power meter. Let's take a look. Victory or betrayal, but still it's a powerful victory. We won. Or did we? Перемогли. Всем пока.
By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if soon, for example, Ukrainian drones start striking Iran. So what does that give us? Nothing here, nothing there. Oh, you're right. You're asking the right question. If the Americans were doing something like that, then the question is, what do we get out of it? And we should get ourselves the same status, basically, as Israel has, for example, with the United States, commercially.